My grandmother was the type of person who planned for events at least a year in advance. This gave her an opportunity to review recipes, check in with my aunts as the events ended so they could review what worked and what didn't work, and how they might suggest we could do things differently. This careful planning allowed her to host the best Thanksgiving gatherings, in my humble opinion. But in 2001, it seemed like everything was going as planned. That is, until it wasn't. Unexpectedly, her oven stopped operating after the turkey had been cooking for only 10 minutes. And this was discovered by my grandmother when she suddenly heard a loud and drawn-out no from one of my aunts upstairs. She was trying to do too much at once in an attempt to reduce her trips in and out of the house, thinking she had found a novel idea. She had placed many of her freshly baked pies into a very large box, and she had managed to open the side door and step mostly into the house when the bottom of the box gave out and all the pies dropped onto the floor and onto the front step, most of them landing, as you would probably guess, on their tops. This created an incredibly goopy mess as the apple and cherry fillings oozed out between their wax paper tops and foil bottoms. Being ever resourceful and prepared, my grandmother implemented what she referred to as Plan B. She commanded my uncles to transport the turkey to her main kitchen on the main floor to finish cooking, while my grandfather examined her stove to find out the source of the trouble. Then she and my aunts went to see what they could salvage from what we referred to as the Great Pie Drop. Thankfully, a few Dutch apple pies and some of the cherry pies were rescued. Thankfully, her mud pies were still safe in the trunk of her car, as were the wonderful Buckeyes that she loved to make. However, sadly, the pumpkin pies and the green bean casserole were also safely in the trunk. Thankfully, Plan B worked, which reinforced my grandmother's rule of thumb. Always be ready with a contingency plan. Whether preparing for a vacation or going out on the boat, one hopes that everything goes according to plan. But as every Boy Scout and Girl Scout knows, one never knows what challenge will be encountered, but they must be prepared to practice to act on any accident or emergency. Hence, she shared the motto by the Scouts, which declares, "Be prepared." Entering this week of Thanksgiving, our tension is likely rising. And it likely didn't help that I just shared the image of a gone wrong Thanksgiving with you. But hopefully, with a little preparation and foresight regarding how we would respond to a less than ideal situation, hopefully it will go as wonderfully as the Plan B of my grandmother, because she was prepared. And it always seemed that she was prepared for any situation which arrived. Turning to the gospel reading of Luke, we are informed to be prepared. In this case, it is being constantly prepared for Jesus to return. It can also be a reminder for us to be amply prepared for the surprises we encounter in life. According to Jesus, he claims that even he does not know the day or hour in which he will arrive, which means only God will ultimately orchestrate this timing and likely appreciates surprising the universe. Surprise, Bethlehem, an infant king not born from royalty. Surprise, Herod, you're being replaced. Surprise, shepherd, considered the least of these, you will get to witness the majestic arrival of the infant king. Surprise, Rome, you will soon no longer have any power in the world. Surprise, death, you no longer have the final word over humanity. All of this is part of God's surprise. And it was part of Jesus' ministry as he journeyed around Galilee and people came to him and learned from him. One of the things they learned from Jesus is to find peace. Peace within and peace without. Regarding peace without, Jesus taught that as we have the means, we ought to seek peace with our neighbors and create peace with strangers. Some might claim he taught shalom or peace, and that's not incorrect, but it's not fully correct. It's just our interpretation of shalom is often too narrow. Tomorrow night at our Thanksgiving service, Rabbi Klein is going to define and expand our understanding of what the Hebrew word shalom actually teaches. And as a preview of tomorrow, as Jesus used shalom, it's that peace that we make when we're making contacts or promises of not warring with someone. Shalom is about being whole or complete so you can invest your life into the lives of others. Shalom is serving our neighbors in need, building relationships of trust, and seeking a true pact of peace. Regarding a peace within, this peace seeks to understand what causes us to feel anxious or stressed about situations in life, and to learn how to place them aside so that they don't control us. This is often difficult to do in a stressful situation. I believe Jesus knew this was true as he encountered some of his own inner concerns as the crowds pressed constantly on him, and as he stood toe-to-toe with temple officials, trying to help them open their minds to God's still speaking voice, and revealing that God is doing wonderful things in their midst, just as God keeps doing incredible things in our midst. If we allow God to love those whom God loves and move with God as God moves. At times, Jesus had to retreat to a location in the mountains to be alone so he could pray, just pray, and remind himself all things are in God's hands. One of the big reminders is God's timing is God's and not ours. Renewed spiritually, mentally, and physically, Jesus returned and taught that our stress levels would greatly decrease if we focused on our state of readiness, being prepared for various scenarios we might experience. This is summed up by Jesus' reminder when he constantly provided to his disciples and his followers, saying, "Do not worry." As this relates to this Thanksgiving, I invite you and encourage you not to focus your mind and energy solely onto creating the perfect meal or the perfect gathering. Instead, allow yourself to be present with your family and friends. Don't ball and chain yourself to the stove. Just know your backup plan and be ready to implement it. Most importantly, enjoy this holiday, because if we've learned anything from COVID, at any point, we could lose 2 years' worth of having family time, unable to cook a family meal, or unable to share it with others, unable to do our traditional family events. At any time, our time could be interrupted, even as Luke announced by Jesus' return. Announcing Jesus' return at some unknown point in time was said as an assurance to alleviate fear. It was a type of postmillennial optimistic statement which called upon the congregation to not fear the future, nor simply sit on a bench waiting for Jesus to return. Instead, the statement, "Be ready," called us to be ready to welcome Jesus' presence. Be ready to be a servant of God. Be ready to act in the interests of the kingdom. Be ready. Be prepared. Be mindful and live in a state of readiness, so that instead of panicking when challenges arise, we are prepared. And as such, we can see opportunities which arise through God, aware that there could be things that interrupt our expectations. Still, we can keep cool about the situation so we can experience our inner creativity with a cool head. Earlier this week, and I'm going to defer from this a little bit, Catherine and I had an opportunity to have dinner with our fellow cast members. And Debbie, who played my stage wife, had this opportunity just before she came where she was learning CPR as a dental tech. And the very cool lesson she gave us is, you just have to be cool. And then remember one song, "Staying Alive, Staying Alive, ooh, ooh, ooh." Chest compressions, it works. But you have to plan ahead. You have to be cool about it. You have to think about how you might respond to a stressful situation. And therefore, we can retain our patience, perhaps keep our sanity, all while recalling you aren't the first one to experience a Thanksgiving that's gone off the rails. But after that Thanksgiving holiday was over, going back to my grandmother's story, My grandmother sat in her kitchen and with a smile remarked, "Next year, I'll have Plan C ready." My prayer for all of you as you prepare for this holiday season, may everything go as you have planned it. And if it happens to head off the rails, I hope you have planned ahead for nearly every contingency so you are prepared to embrace it with creativity, synergy, and success. And always, always remember, God is with you because you prepared.